Hey guys, in this video we're going to talk about the best camera for beginner photographers. This is a question I get asked a lot, and I totally get it. It can feel like a really overwhelming decision. There are so many options out there. Mirrorless or SLR, full frame or crop sensor, Sony, Canon, Nikon, Fuji. In this video, I'm going to break down the things that actually matter when you're choosing your camera and the things that don't. I want to teach you how to choose a camera rather than list a few and tell you what to go by. Because frankly, cameras become outdated and replaced for newer versions or newer models, basically every 12 months at best. So, in order to teach you how to make the best decision for yourself, we need to look at two main things. One, budget, and two, purpose. Your budget is going to determine what you can afford, of course, and your purpose is going to determine what is worth spending more or less money on, as well as what's important to you. So when it comes to purpose, if you're just starting out and you want to do photography for fun and as a hobby, there's really no point of you spending $3,000 on a high-end camera. If you know you want to become a professional and eventually become a freelance photographer, then of course investing in a professional camera body would make sense. Look, I've shot incredible photos with my toy film cameras and with my iPhone, but the truth is what makes an amazing photographer isn't the gear. But the gear of course helps. Skills are what will help you make the most out of any camera you buy, so I would always recommend investing in education as well as gear. Spending more money on a camera is not going to make your photos better. I can take a better photo with a camera from 10 years ago than a newbie can take with the latest highest end model. So your goal should be to buy a camera that can grow with you, something you can get comfortable with and easily learn new skills on. What I would say is this: as long as you buy a camera model that has come out in the last 2 to 3 years, it's a camera that can go into full manual mode and you can change your lenses on it, you have your bases covered. Being able to change lenses is the very first thing that sets a professional camera apart from a consumer model. A point and shoot or a compact camera that comes with one lens attached simply doesn't have the quality and the possibilities that an interchangeable lens camera does. So let's get into it. The first thing you want to do is understand how pricing works. We can actually categorize cameras fairly easily by price. Anything below $500 is going to be entry level, between $500 and $1,000 is going to be your intermediate, and anything above and beyond that is going to be a professional range. So why are cameras different prices? And why do brands offer different tiers with entry level, mid-range, and pro cameras? What makes that price difference? Well, what mostly makes the difference is the camera build quality. Whether the camera is made out of plastic instead of metal, and whether it has some sort of weather sealing. There's more to it, but these are your basic deciding factors. The other price driving factor is going to be the features that the camera has. These are things like the sensor size, which of course also results in resolution, your frames per second, and video capabilities. There's going to be other photography business specifics that certain camera models offer. Again, if you're just starting out, pay more for example, a continuous high frame rate, which is a feature for sport photography, wouldn't make any sense to you. So if you have the extra budget to invest, you might be tempted to spend on a higher end camera, but I would actually highly recommend you spend that money on a better lens or on a second lens rather than more expensive camera bodies. That's where you're going to see a much bigger difference in your images. So, if you can decide what your budget is for your first camera and you roughly know what's the purpose behind the buying, whether you're going to be a beginner or you think you're going to want to become a professional, you should now be able to narrow down to entry level, intermediate, or professional range. And that's going to narrow down your choices a lot. So now that we've figured that out, let's talk about the next main deciding factor when buying your first camera: mirrorless versus SLR. I have a whole other video explaining the difference between mirrorless cameras and SLR cameras. So if you want to learn more about that, click on the link to read on. Let's talk SLRs. To keep it simple, SLR stands for single lens reflex, and that means it's a camera that is built with a mirror inside. This makes the focusing system fast and the viewing system quite accurate. What you see through the viewfinder is exactly what you see in real life. The main benefit of an SLR is, quite honestly, the price, and what I would say the legacy, meaning they have been around for longer, so you have a bigger lens range and there are more options for accessories, and there's a lot more information available online and offline. They also have better battery performance. It's not a major deciding factor, but that is something you should know, because of course, when you're not looking at your LCD screen to look at what you're seeing and you're using an optical viewfinder, there's a lot less battery usage. Now let's talk about mirrorless cameras. Mirrorless cameras are the newest technology, and the mirror system has been replaced with a digital system. That means what you see on your viewfinder is a digital image, same as the LCD screen. If you're starting from scratch, I think mirrorless is the way to go, as they are the future of photography. They're smaller, they're lighter, and often even more affordable for higher-end image quality. You also won't have to get used to the viewfinder change like I did, or the lower battery life like we all had with SLRs. So I will say that DSLRs have more affordable options though. So if price is a driving factor for you, you should consider starting with that. Let's talk about sensor size next. Your sensor does what back in the day film did. It's the part of your camera that actually captures the image. As you can imagine, the bigger the sensor, the more space to hold information, and therefore the better resolution. There are 3 sizes of sensors available. I would only recommend you focus on either a crop sensor, which is 2/3 of the size of a full sensor, or a full frame camera. If you want to learn more about sensors, hop on my video about full frame versus crop sensor for more details. The camera sensor size will affect 3 main things. 1, the resolution and quality of the image you're producing. 2, the size of the camera itself. And 3, you guessed it, the price. For buying your first camera, I would suggest going back to your main purpose of getting a camera. If you think you might want to go professional, then paying more for a full frame camera is totally worth it. If you're going to approach photography as a hobby, I promise you, you will not know the difference. You would only notice the difference in real dark situations when you need to have really good high performance at high ISOs. Crop sensor cameras, of course, are smaller, they're cheaper, and the lenses for them are also more affordable. So this decision alone can literally save you hundreds of dollars and a lot of weight. With a smaller sensor, you get a smaller camera, and your accessories and lenses will also get smaller. So if weight and comfort is important to you, I will give this a careful thought. Next up, we are talking camera brands. Nikon, Canon, Fuji, Sony, what should you buy? Look guys, a camera is a camera. At the end of the day, the brand comes down to just personal choice. I've had the Nikon versus Canon argument so many times, and to be honest, I clearly favor one brand over another, but it's not for the reason that you think. I'm a hardcore Nikon user, but I ended up with Nikon by absolute chance. When I bought my first camera, I was a pretty broke 20-year-old university student, and I was bargain shopping, trying to get the best deal that I could. I found a bundle on eBay that got me a camera body, 3 lenses, and a few accessories for a price that I could actually afford. So that's why I ended up with Nikon instead of Canon. That's it. Now, 15 years later, I'm too used to the ergonomics, the settings, and the color rendering of Nikon, so I would actually never consider switching to another brand. Switching would have me changing not only all my lenses and accessories, but actually giving up my post-processing, settings, presets, editing style. It would be a nightmare for me. So I know people who have switched camera brands, but for me, I like what I have, I'm comfortable where I'm at, and I have spent good money on lenses and a lot of time developing my editing style, so I couldn't switch off Nikon. I'll be honest, I've used Canons before and I find them really uncomfortable. I don't know where the buttons are, everything seems upside down. I've used Sony's, and although I think technically they're very advanced in terms of The technology behind it, I find them a little bit too digital and hard to use. I think Nikon has more affordable lenses and more options, as you can still use a lot of the old lenses if you're still using an SLR. But some people might say that Canon has better lens options. I don't know, it might just be a myth. So when talking Nikon versus Canon, the truth is that there isn't all that much difference between camera brands. All camera brands are going to have entry-level options, mid-level options, and professional level options. So I actually have quite a lot of experience using different cameras. I bought a Fuji mirrorless for traveling a few years ago, and I actually loved it for a while. It was smaller, it was easier to sneak around for street photography. Eventually, most of my travels turned into work, so I couldn't really afford to travel without my professional gear. And my Fuji was a crop sensor. I really felt the difference, so I ended up having to go back to my main camera, that Fuji, sitting on a shelf somewhere. I found that it didn't have high enough quality images for the clients, so I had to abandon it. I've used Sony's a few times as well, and technology-wise, I think the A series is amazing, but I just couldn't get used to the shape of the body, the digital feel of it, and the color rendering. If I was starting over from scratch, I would actually probably get a Sony mirrorless camera. I think they're amazing, but I'm a bit too old school, and I'm used to what I'm used to. I like what I like, so I just can't do it. I have also shot Canon cameras in the past, and they're amazing, but again, the buttons are kind of in the wrong place for me. I don't really enjoy the process of shooting Canon. My good friend owns a Canon, and she tells me how much she loves the bulkiness and the heaviness of it. It makes her feel like she's really at work. For me, it's totally the opposite. I love how small Nikon lenses can be, and I'm all about shooting light and comfortable. So I always loved the smaller Nikon size, where some people prefer the heavy and the bulkiness of Canon. We went on a work trip together a few years ago, and my camera broke down. I had to leave it behind to get it repaired, so I had to shoot with our Canon. It was fine because we were working together and I knew I could just use her camera, and the images turned out amazing, but the shooting itself was so hard. It really didn't feel second nature. I had to think about everything that I was doing, and the editing was tough. I couldn't use any of my usual presets and settings, and I was so used to Nikon colors that I wasn't able to edit the shots to look exactly how I wanted them to. What I'm trying to say is, a camera is a camera. Pick what you like the most, what makes you feel the most comfortable, and the level of camera that matches the work that you do. And that's it. Maybe even look into color rendering and how the looks vary, but other than that, don't get caught up on the quality argument, nor trying to get the same camera as your favorite creative, because the results will be so different anyway. I would though recommend sticking to one of the more known brands, that's Nikon, Canon, Sony, Fuji, etc., as not only there is way more equipment available for them, there's also more resources online for troubleshooting and for problem solving. So they really are considered the industry standard for a reason, and anywhere you go you'll find supporting equipment, repair shops, and options for equipment without any issues. If you're doing something like Pentax or any other brands that are a little bit more obscure, you might have a hard time in a pinch. So the best thing you can do right now is go to a camera store or borrow a camera from a photographer friend and just try things out. See what you like, see if something stands out for you, and then just go for that. If something is on sale, then go for that. And if someone in your family or in your friend group already uses a particular brand, that can be a great incentive to choose that. There's no wrong choice here. Trust me, once you pick a camera that you like, you will not regret it. As you evolve with your photography, you will find that the most important thing to change is your lenses, not your camera brand. On that note, let's talk about lenses. As you must have guessed it by now, I have a whole other video on the topic of lenses, for those who are interested in understanding this topic better. But for the purpose of buying your first camera, I'm gonna keep it simple and I'm gonna tell you what you need to know. Lenses range anywhere from $100 to literally $10,000. And your photos will only ever be as good as your lenses. So if you have an amazing camera but a shit lens, your image quality will be shit. But if you have a basic camera with an amazing lens, your photos have a better chance of being amazing. The price truly reflects the lens quality and build. So the cheaper the lens, the cheaper the glass, plastic, or metal used to build it. Usually, more expensive lenses have bigger aperture options, think f1.8 to f2.8, and cheaper lenses either have an f-stop range or won't go lower than f4. The other main distinction between lenses is its functionality. A lens can either be a zoom or a prime. A zoom lens has a range of focal length, meaning it can go all the way from a wide angle like a 24mm to a telephoto like a 70mm, for example. A prime lens only has one focal length, but usually does that one thing better than any zoom lens. So for beginners, I always recommend starting with a zoom lens. This is because you can explore the different focal length and discover what you like. A zoom lens is going to give you versatility and allow you to use your camera in different settings. A go-to range would be a 24 to 70mm lens. The equivalent to that on a crop camera would be an 18 to a 50mm or so. This is where I would put the extra money if you have it. Get in a zoom lens with a better quality build than the kit lens, or purchase in a second lens, like a nifty 50 with a 2.8 aperture, so you can start playing with shallow depth of field, blurry backgrounds, and beautiful portraits. Like I said, if this is a little bit over your head and you're not quite understanding how lenses work, hop on my other video to understand this in detail. Let's talk video. The last thing I want to briefly touch on is video settings on your camera. The video capabilities on your new camera is going to be a big part of what drives the price. If you're not interested in video at all, you can ignore this completely. But if you think you might want to get into video, make sure your camera is capable of at least recording at 4K. There'll be a huge price hike between cameras that can shoot at a higher frame rate per second and other driving factors, but if you don't even know what I'm talking about, that's your clue that this doesn't matter for you and that you don't need it. So just to sum that up, if you think you might want to start shooting some video, vlogging, taking the camera on trips, make sure that your camera can record at least 4K and you should be good to go. Let's talk buying second-hand equipment. This is something I get asked a lot. Is it a good idea to buy your camera second-hand? I totally get it. The prices are much more tempting. Look, buying secondhand can be risky, but it can also save you a lot of money. I always suggest buying your camera new and your lenses secondhand, because a camera is a digital technology which is much more wearable and a lot harder to figure out where it stands, where lenses are mechanical and they don't really age as fast as cameras do. So if you are buying a camera secondhand, these are the things that I recommend you look into. Make sure the camera has a low shutter count. Try to find out the entire history of the camera, what it's been, how long it's been owned, whether it was bought secondhand already or if it was bought brand new from the store, and what kind of shoot has it been used for. If you can buy from a trusted owner, that will be amazing because it's going to give you an extra layer of safety. And if you can't, I suggest go to a store that offers secondhand range. A lot of the stores often have a section of new cameras and a section of cameras that take as trade-ins, and they usually have some sort of guarantees because they check the cameras before selling them. This is going to be maybe a little bit more expensive than buying it straight off, let's say Kijiji if you're in Canada, Facebook Marketplace or eBay, but it is going to give you some sort of guarantee and there's somewhere to go back to if something goes wrong. So when it comes to buying secondhand, the best thing you can do is try to buy from someone or somewhere trustworthy where you can ask questions or go back to if something goes wrong. So to summarize, here's a recap of what you need to know in order to buy your first camera. The first thing you want to do is determine your budget and your purpose. This will help narrow down the options. Cameras below $1,000 are entry-level, cameras above that are usually professional. What mostly makes a difference in the camera pricing is the build quality and the features, as well as sensor size. If you can afford the choice between SLRs and mirrorless, I would recommend a mirrorless for a beginner. And if you want to do photography as a hobby, crop sensors should be plenty enough. And if you think you might want to become a freelancer, a full frame camera is worth the investment. The camera brand doesn't matter. Choose what feels good for you. If you have experience with anything, if anyone you know has a camera that you can test out, that is just as valid option as anything else. When it comes to lenses, a zoom is going to be the most versatile option to get started. And if you have the extra money to spend, I would recommend to put that into the lens rather than the camera body, or invest into a second lens like a prime so you can test out better aperture options and have fun and learn new things. Lastly, we talked about video capabilities and how it has an impact on the price. But as long as your camera can record 4K, you don't need to worry about anything else and you should be covered. We made a note about buying cameras secondhand, and I told you that it can be risky, but if you decide to do it, to make sure to go to a camera store or go through someone you know and trust. Congratulations, if you're here, you made it through my longest and most detailed video yet. I hope by now you feel like you know what the heck you're doing and you have a clear guide to go buy your first camera. As always, if you have any questions or feedback, leave me a comment and I'd love to get back to you. And if you'd like to support my channel, please subscribe. Thank you guys.